Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. This is your host, Punam here. This is the fourth episode of the series Career Choice, the Intelligent Way. In this series, we are exploring how neuroscience, education, and emotional intelligence come together to help families thrive. Today's episode, we are going to talk about the power of thinking, how your thinking style impacts decision making. We will also explore about personalities. So now I would first focus on, how the way we think impacts everything, the choices we make, not what just we think, but how we think is very important. And who better to guide us than other than Dr. Sweta Adatia, neurologist and author of Future Ready Now, a groundbreaking book on using neuroscience to design life and career from the inside out. Dr. Shweta, thank you for being with us again. We have opened so many doors for families to think beyond the usual advice and really look at how our brains operate. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Punam, and also to all the listeners. It's always wonderful to be talking about living beautifully and thriving.
Yes, let's start at the beginning. What exactly do we mean by a thinking style, and how is it different from intelligence?
Beautiful, lovely question. So, intelligence is the way in which you can solve a problem. So, I can have a mathematical intelligence, I can have a fine motor intelligence, the Harvard Gardner's theory, also, as we know, the various types of intelligences, and then the traditional IQ system, as we know, is how we can solve a problem. But thinking is about my daily behavior. How am I choosing to talk? What is the way in which I communicate? What is the way in which I operate my daily life? What is the way in which the dynamics that I operate from? For example, if I'm presenting, what is the way in which my behavior is? The way in which my relationships with my family thrives? All this is coming from the thinking. The way I think, I act. Now, most of the times, the way I act is often unconscious or subconscious. We never have the denominator or behind the scene of how I am thinking. What is that type of the thinking which is leading me to do that automatically over and over again? So that is what the thinking preferences are all about. Now, it does stem from the brain. So it is coming from the way the brain is wired, the way the brain has been exposed in the young childhood. So between 0 and 6, which is the main, I would say, the multi-sensory absorption period where you get all the sensory experiences, and then the way your brain is crafted and the way your brain is prepared. Then it sort of slowly solidifies, and by the age of 13, certain thinking preferences becomes hardwired. Example, if I am hardwired to think from the perspective of data, any conversation which is going, my brain will click only when certain things related to data comes in. If my brain is wired to be more empathetic, wired to be more people centric, I would be interested in a conversation only when we are talking about benefit to people, or talking about people, or talking about the context of socialization. So this is how the wiring of the brain happens. Now we call it My Brain Design because that's the tool that we have developed in the Future Ready Now that you mentioned. So in that My Brain Design, we talk about four parts of the brain. And each of us, you, me, every single person on this earth would have that differentiation of that type of the brain. And it will be very unique. It will be very individual. It will be very, very special for that person. and each of us would either be thinking from mostly 60% of the times two parts of the brain, 1% from all the four parts of the brain, about 7% from three parts of the brain, and then the remaining would be one part of the brain. So each person has that unconscious ability or subconscious ability to display the behaviors based on this thinking pattern.
Thank you, Dr. Ashweta, for educating us. But one question was coming to my mind. How does our thinking style influence the kinds of decision we make, and especially
Hmm.
under pressure?
Very nice question. Lovely question. See, what happens is let's talk about the formative years, right? The formative years happened and my brain got crafted, and then I have a certain thinking tendency. Now, imagining that I'm aware about it. Let me give my own example. I'm extremely process centric. So I operate from a certain type of the brain which is very heavily data driven and process centric. So I want everything organized, I want everything perfect, I want all the details, whatever is possible. At the same time, my brain also operates from being innovative, creative, new things. How many neurologists would walk out and say, okay, I don't want to do a traditional neurology, I don't want to see a patient in a clinic 10 by 10, I would rather go do community neurology, I would rather explore tools for building the brain, etc. So that is the innovation part or the creativity part, newness part, out of the box thinking which comes in. Now imagine that I am extremely stressed and I have to operate. Now these are the two my sort of muscles which are my dominant muscle from which I am operating. Suddenly a severe significant stress comes in my life has certain challenges. What will happen is one of the brain parts will shut. So I will now be operating from one part only, which will largely be protective part, or largely be the part where you are safe. So I don't want to take risk, I don't want to innovate at that point in time. Most people, when a significant stress comes in, you do shift your brain thinking pattern temporarily. It's often situational, to that particular part of the brain which is largely data centric, largely protective, largely lower brain centric. So that's how general formulas work. But the idea of this entire knowledge is to become conscious, to become aware, and situationally also mold into the type of the brain which you don't have. For example, I don't have a largely a type of the brain which is all about people, empathy, cooperation, lots of teamwork, empathy. But my large 80% of my job and work is people. So that means it is not my primary thinking type, but I have to don that as a skill. So I am very conscious and aware that that's my constant, continuous skill building, which will continue for life. So where do I get in my thinking preference? And where do I keep building my skill would eventually decide how I succeed, and not just succeed in terms of career, profession, money, but also in terms of family dynamics, friendships, relationships. I think entire, everything is all about the balance that we can have in life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. But next question in my mind, how can parents help their children discover and strengthen their thinking style? Right? Because as you
Yes.
said, in the formative years, kids are learning from parents, environment, school, friends. But they also need to decide about their future. So how
Yes.
parents can help their children?
Absolutely. So, the first thing that the parents have to understand is they should know how the child is thinking. Now, education is not about what the child is learning. Education is all about how the child is learning. Education is all about how do you communicate with the child, not what do you do to, communicate with the child. Now, I will understand that in between the age of 13 and 18, because that's the largely the data and the sets that we have studied, the research that we have done. So between 13 and 18, when you are in the junior school and then the senior high school, and then you have to choose your careers, etc., if we are aware about this hardwired thinking preference, then the parents can now understand how to talk to the child. What are the ways in which you can make the child study, make the child learn? Now you have to mirror what the child is wanting to have, and then choose the subjects, choose the career path. When you do that, so when you have a thinking preference and then you have a career match to it, it's like a key and lock. There is no extra effort required for that. The skills in the preferred quadrant of thinking would flow in naturally. It'll be an immediate key and a lock mechanism. I think we did talk about that in our previous episode as well. It's like an almost seamless way to get the child succeed.
Absolutely. And I think they will gain that confidence in decision making if parents are supporting their thinking style and nurturing that. So, another question in my mind, how can we and our kids make better decision, especially in today's noisy world?
Yes, the world is definitely noisy. There's no question about it. It's VUCA, it's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. There's no question about it. Lots and lots of career opportunities, lots and lots of distractibilities, the lots and lots of technological ambiguity. You don't know what AI is going to do. You don't know what jobs AI is going to take, etc. Yes, it is quite a bit of uncertain things that we have around. But the mathematical formula of the brain does not change. The brain is evolving, but definitely not at a pace where it will surpass all the processes which are happening externally. We will need to carry the same brain, be it be industry 1, industry 2, industry 3, or industry 4. The entire pretext of how the brain is wired is basically to keep ourselves safe, secured, the survival mechanism. But at the same time, the brain is also wired to navigate the uncertainty. The brain is also wired to basically figure out and make a place in the world. And that is what we as parents or educators have to understand, that the current generation, which is going to be exposed to the technological nuances, to the uncertainties, should not be equipped with a lot of technological know-how that they will gain any which ways. There will be a lot of chat gpts and there'll be a lot of AI algorithms. What we really need to give the know-how is, what is their brain capable of? What are their potentials? What is the way in which they think? What is the way in which people think? How can they navigate collaboratively in terms of communication, in terms of outreach, empathy, concern, care, compassion? So all this is what we have to make them understand and learn as well. It's all, life is all going to be about that. So in the future ready now, we talk about a little pyramid. So you start with self discovery, you go on to self expansion of the career consciousness, then you go on to career focus, then you go on to this upskilling, which we call flow and grow. So you build your strengths 3 times as compared to your weakness 1 time. Now, often we have this tendency of covering up all the weaknesses. Let's, build everything, all the skills around our weaknesses. We just say the reverse, that when you drive a car, look at the front, which is your main strength, but you do shoulder check, which is your weakness. Now, you don't drive a car only looking at the rear mirror, right? You do drive a car looking front. So that's your strength. So, in the terms of flow, build the skills which are with your strengths. And then the next thing is mirror the successful people. So we have built a lot of library of even the EEG brain scans, because we want the children of tomorrow to have a look at the leaders, the CEOs, the thinkers, athletes, artists, you name it, so that they can see what is the hard wiring of their brains, actual brains, in terms of personality, communication, behavior, resilience, passion, purpose. Where are all these circuits, hidden? And then comes the career success. So it's a very, very meticulous approach to leading a life, rather than just testing and trying. Let me just figure a career out. I mean, I did my medicine like that. Let me see, if I like it, I'll continue. But times have changed. Things have changed. We don't need to do that same way.
Yep. So that's bringing another question in my mind. So, Dr. Shweta, are there any tools or psychometric testing things available for our next generation, our kids? They can maybe take that test and find out more about their personalities. So, please do educate us on that.
Yes. So psychometric tools have been there with us for time immemorial, quite a long time. Carl Jung was pretty much the first guy, the MBTI. There's so many things which are available in terms of the personality. Now, I, as a neurologist, when I studied my own 72 psychometric tools, I just kept on doing, just to understand what is the measure, what is the primary purpose of each of those tools. What I very quickly realized is that we need a tool which is giving me a hardwired reason that, look, this is how your brain is going to operate for the coming 30, 40 years. I can change situationally, but largely this is what I will be operating from. It's like in my bank, what is the $1 million that I have? Let's say if I have $1 million, I may get the interest, but my principle is that The same way, this is my principal area of the brain that I have to operate from. Now, personalities are quite dynamic. So any test which is psychometric, based on personalities, based on aptitudes, based on certain ways in which the person is relating themselves to the world and all, can be quite dynamic. And that is what we figured out. I mean, there was a huge fad of going through these DMIT, the dermatoglyphics, and then the through the fingerprints, figuring it out, the careers and all. That is not what I would like my child to do, because it is only 50% of the story. Your epigenetics is not taken into account, which is your environment is not taken into account. So any test, any assessment which is not dependent on mood, personality, intelligence, which is aptitude, etc., because then there will be a lot of bias in that. So that's why what I like is something which is neurometric in nature. So our my brain design was built after review of all of this, and then comparing each of those against each tools. So the first fundamental question is, do you have to use something? Answer is, I am a strong proponent of you should use it, because it's like a little mirror which comes in. Sometimes I do know myself, but how do I confirm that? How do I look? I look good, but where do I confirm? So I look into the mirror, right? So this is my brain type, and I do look into the mirror. That's number one. And number two is not getting too test happy as well. So, this is not the test that I got the good sort of good marks. It is not about marks, it is not about scores. It is just a deep self inquiry. It is also a scientific inquiry into what is my strength and capabilities, how do I use it, and in the least possible effort, how can I build a skill. The whole entire equation, and what we call as the life skill map, is all about, I have certain, let's say, opportunities. I have certain resources. I have a school which gives me an X number of subjects. I have a family which has a family business. I have an X amount of support from my extracurriculars. And this is my brain type. And this is my quickest skill which I can develop. With all these factors around, with the quickest skill, where can I be going next? Which will be the best thing which will turn out to be in terms of career? So, this is how we very meticulously plan and populate when it comes to the tool.
That's beautiful. What I understand, these tools are available, but we need to be using it carefully, not just simply take the output and label it, because as you said, personalities are dynamic. There is a growth mindset, right? So we can definitely do things which are really insightful over the time. So, Doctor, would you like to share a little bit how personality is connected to brain? Because I know you are a brain scientist and you keep bringing there is a connection. So, anything would you like to share on that?
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that it is not really about labeling, it is about unlocking. So, when you understand a certain thing, then you understand, oh, this is my front mirror, this is my rear mirror, this is a blemish which I need to work upon. This is great, I need to basically grow that. So, that's why we have a formula called flow and grow. The moment you understand your brain type, you flow with that skill because you give your maximum best to that, and then you grow just 3:1. So, you give only one portion of the efforts to grow that weakness that is there. Now, yes, as you rightly mentioned, behaviors are directly proportional to the type of the brain. So, for example, I was giving you the example of my brain, a very innovative, very out of the box thinking, very, very innovative challenges. I accept challenges just like, okay, this is a research which has never been done. Okay, I'm going to grab that. So, now if I have that brain's thinking type, I would generally be a risk taker. There's a tendency for me to get into a job where there's a lot of ambiguity. But let us assume that I have a partner who's completely against that, who has a brain which is only wired for safety, security, don't take risks, be very, very firm about the thing, make sure that the data is right, don't invest, etc. Now, obviously, then there will be some conflict. So the personalities which are stemming out from the thinking types have to be understood, and once we understand that, life becomes very easy. In fact, this particular direct application was for my parents. I never understood why would they have some problems, and it would be all silly things which they would fight over. And then over the time I realized, oh, my dad's a completely, sort of a data centric, very left brain, very, very meticulous, while my mom is largely a right person. She wants everything adventure, let's take risks, let's do this. It was only their individualized, customized, very unique personalities, and there's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong in that. It's how each person's personality is based on this underlying brain type.
Thank you, Dr. Shweta, for sharing your personal stories and talking about your parent. This has been such a practical and eye-opening conversation. Thank you for helping us see that personality is not just about preference, it's a powerful insight into how we move through life. It was a
Yes.
pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much, Punam. Thank you. And thank you to all the people who are listening that, when you have these kind of scientific access, make use of it. Make yourself very aware about what are the potential implications of it. The moment I learned this tool many, many years back, all my issues with my friends got sorted, my professional life got sorted, because now I exactly know how the person will be behaving. I exactly know what do I expect from a particular personality. I exactly know what am I going to have in a presentation, because that particular person is tuned to either a very right brain, very upper brain, which is more about analysis and creativity, or a very lower brain, which is about empathy and care. So automatically my life, there is and brain is often a meaning making machine. If you pre understand and predict what is going to happen, the cognitive shocks will be less. So then you are always prepared. So it makes me very well prepared for any kind of situation, any kind of person, any kind of project, program, situation, career, anything that is there.
That's so beautiful. So, for everyone listening, check out Future Ready Now by Dr. Sweta Adatia. It's full of science based strategies to help family design a fulfilling future, starting with who they are. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind to your brain, and remember personality is not a limit, it's a launch pad. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every Friday, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.